At Thanksgiving, they made me use the back door. Said, only family comes through the front. No seat at the table. No welcome. Just leftovers on the porch. I didn't argue. I didn't speak. But when her father stood for a toast, I stood too. And what I said next made half the table go silent, and the other half walk out. Something had been off for days. It started as a dull ache low in my gut and crept up my spine like a warning I didn't want to hear. At first, I chalked it up to stress, just fallout from another exhausting week of strategy reviews, fake enthusiasm, and those endless meetings that drained more than they ever gave. But that morning, as I stepped into the conference room, the ache changed. Sharpened. Like it wanted to make itself known. I hesitated at the door, one hand resting on the metal frame, wondering if maybe I'd just eaten something that didn't sit right. Years of hearing "walk it off" and "don't be soft" had trained me well. I could bury pain under polite smiles and keep pace with any deadline. Headaches, backaches, hell, even fevers. I'd worked through them all. That was the job. That was me. So I told myself I was fine. Just tired. But as I made my way past the glass walls, catching my own reflection in them, something felt wrong in a way I couldn't brush aside. There was this hollow pressure blooming in my chest, and no amount of deep breathing could clear it. I took my seat like always, surrounded by the usual sea of suits and corporate cheerleaders, flipping through glossy decks as if they held divine answers. The slides up front blurred before I could even process them. Numbers, charts, things I usually found comfort in, looked like gibberish. Alan, my boss, was in his rhythm, talking about synergy and quarterly gains, his voice low and constant like a distant lawnmower. I lifted my coffee, hoping a sip might jolt me back into focus, but my hand shook so badly I nearly spilled it and had to set the cup down. A cold sweat started to bead at my hairline, rolling down the side of my face and soaking into my collar. My breathing got shallow, like my lungs were trying to remember how to work. I dug my fingers into the edge of the table, white-knuckled, desperate to ground myself in something solid, something familiar. That table had carried me through countless battles, but today it felt like sand. The pain didn't ease. It dug deeper, twisting like something alive inside me, sharp and serrated. My vision started to blur, the faces around me turning into faceless blots. I heard Alan call my name, clipped and annoyed, like I was interrupting the show. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Just air and panic. Then the pain struck again, a harder, meaner, and I couldn't stop the sound that came out. Half groan, half gasp. I tried to stifle it, but it escaped anyway. My body gave out. I crumpled forward, my head hitting the table with a thud that felt final. That's the last thing I remember before everything went dark. I don't remember the gasps or the chaos. When I came to, I was staring up at harsh fluorescent lights that cut through me like blades. There were paramedics now, blue uniforms, quick hands, calm voices. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, lowered an oxygen mask over my face and told me to breathe. I tried, but every inhale felt like I was being torn from the inside out. My heart was slamming against my ribs, wild and frantic. I reached for my phone, fingers clumsy, numb, and somehow unlocked the screen. I needed Sienna. She always knew what to do. She had to. I hit her name. It rang. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice snapped through, irritated, distracted. Can it wait? Nolan's presenting to investors right now. I tried to speak, to tell her I was scared, that I needed her. But my voice got lost behind the mask and all the noise. Sienna, I croaked. But she was gone. Just like that. She hung up. Her name dimmed on the screen as the paramedics lifted me onto the stretcher. Their movements were swift but gentle, like they'd done this 100 times. Everything around me, the boardroom, the voices, the agenda, faded like a dream I couldn't hold on to. The pain returned with a vengeance, sharp and white-hot. I clenched my teeth, biting down on the scream I didn't want to give them. I heard someone, maybe Alan, ask if they should continue the meeting. Even then, even with me collapsed on the floor. That's how little it took to move on. The hallway spun past in streaks of white and gray. The paramedics kept their tones steady, but their faces told the truth. I caught words: appendix, rupture, BP crashing. I tried to focus, to stay tethered to something. Anything. But the world kept slipping further away. Everything grayed at the edges. My mind swam through fog. The ambulance ride was unreal. Sirens outside. Panic inside. I could smell the disinfectant, feel the fear in the tight space. One paramedic leaned in, young, freckles, calm eyes. We're taking you to St. Luke's, he said. You're gonna be all right. Stay with me. I nodded. I think I did. My limbs didn't feel like mine anymore. Like I was piloting myself from somewhere else. And in that floating space, I thought of Sienna again. Her voice. Her cold distance. Can it wait? I'd given her everything. My love. My loyalty. My trust. And when I needed her most, she vanished. That hurt in a way the surgeons couldn't fix. A pain that didn't bleed but burned. Would she even check in later? Or would Nolan's slides be more important? Something wet slid down my cheek. I wasn't sure if it was sweat or tears. The hospital doors burst open, and I was wheeled into a flurry of shouting, beeping, moving hands. Nurses and doctors closed in, a storm of orders and machines. My world narrowed to lights and monitors blinking warnings I couldn't decipher. A nurse squeezed my hand. Firm. Reassuring. You're going into surgery, she said. We've got you. Just hang on. I wanted to believe Sienna would come running. Breathless. Worried. But some part of me knew she wouldn't. Not this time. I shut my eyes and let the dark take me. Alone. On a stretcher. Not sure I'd ever wake up again. I survived, barely. The surgeon's voice played back in my head. Calm and clinical. Complicated appendicitis. Peritonitis. We operated in time. He drew a clean line in the air like he was solving math. But nothing about that pain had felt clean. They'd rushed me in. Bright lights. Blades. The smell of sterilized metal. Faces I couldn't place. Voices I barely heard. Just motion. Just survival. When I finally came to, it was to a room bathed in white and the soft, steady hum of machines tethering me to whatever was left of this side of life. Every breath felt like work. My body didn't feel like mine. More like something patched together after being taken apart one piece at a time. The first face I really registered was Nurse Naomi's. Warm brown eyes. A voice soft enough to feel like a hand resting gently on my shoulder. She told me I'd been lucky. That the emergency surgery had saved me just in time. I gave a slow nod. My head heavy, brain still sluggish from the drugs and the shock of it all. She adjusted a few wires, glanced at the monitor, then asked if I was in pain. And just as she turned away, almost like it was nothing, she added, we didn't have a family contact on file. Should we expect someone? That hit harder than any scalpel. My wife, the one person who should have been there, wasn't. My throat was too dry to respond. I shut my eyes and let the silence speak for me. 3 days passed like one long blur. A parade of 4 drips, vitals checks, and the smell of disinfectant that seemed to seep into every breath. Every time the door opened, my chest tightened with hope. Maybe this time. Maybe it would be Sienna. With flowers. Maybe even guilt. A soft apology, a hand on mine, telling me she'd been worried sick. But each time, it was a nurse with a polite smile, a doctor with a chart, or someone from housekeeping sweeping around the edges of the room. No Sienna. Not a call. Not a text. The nurses stopped pretending they weren't curious. One of them finally asked if I had family coming. I gave them the same answer. Every time. She's busy. I made it sound like a joke, but it chipped away at me each time I said it. Like I was shrinking into the sheets. On the 4th morning, I woke to the lights flickering and voices just outside my door. Voices I knew. Sienna's tone, sharp, impatient, sliced through the hallway hush like glass cracking under pressure. Nolan laughed. That low, syrupy laugh I always hated. I strained to hear them, catching only bits through the buzz of machines and the shuffle of footsteps. The presentation killed, Nolan said, his voice soaked in smugness. They ate it up. Funding's basically in the bag, Sienna replied, her tone breezy. Finally, she added, something going our way. I could practically see that smile of hers, the one she wore when the room was watching, but her eyes never changed. They walked in like this was just a pit stop. Like I was a box to be checked off between meetings. Sienna was done up to perfection. Every hair in place. Makeup like armor. Nolan looked like a stock photo of ambition, pressed suit, rehearsed grin. Her eyes landed on me briefly, like I was a spreadsheet. How are you feeling? She asked. But her attention was already drifting. Nolan said something I couldn't hear, and they both laughed. I felt like I was watching a scene from someone else's life. Like I'd been reduced to a background extra in my own story. I wanted to ask her where she'd been, why she hadn't come sooner, but the words wouldn't come. My mouth was dry, my heart heavier than ever. Then Naomi entered quietly, grounding the air around her just by being there. She held a clipboard and gave Sienna that calm, polite look I'd come to rely on. With quiet authority, she stepped closer and extended the form. Mrs. Whitmore, she said, and the name felt strange in that moment. Distant. We need your signature here. Sienna's whole demeanor changed. Her eyes narrowed, and her hand twitched as she took the clipboard. "What is this?" she snapped. Naomi didn't blink. "It's a routine update. Just confirms your current role in his medical decisions." Then she glanced at me, a subtle question behind her eyes. Sienna scanned the paper, her fingers twitching slightly. "Why are you giving me this now?" she stammered. "I'm his wife." Nolan shifted next to her. The smugness faltered. "Just a little." I stayed silent. Let the quiet stretch out like a warning. Naomi's voice didn't waver. "Because the form was updated," she said. "Your husband made changes to his emergency contact and medical proxy after the operation." Then she turned to me again. "Mr. Whitmore, do you want to explain it, or should I?" My throat burned, but I managed to get it out. "You go ahead." She nodded and turned back to Sienna. "The new proxy lists Elias Delgado as the designated contact. Any care decisions beyond the basics will go through him, unless Mr. Whitmore says otherwise." Sienna froze. Her face drained of color. Lips pressed so tight they disappeared. Nolan's smirk was long gone now, replaced by something closer to dread. She turned back to me, her voice shaky. You did this?" Like I betrayed her. I didn't look away. "Yeah," I said. "I did." She stared at me, stunned. "But I'm your wife." Her voice cracked, loud enough to draw glances from outside. Nolan shifted awkwardly, issue tapping out some nervous rhythm on the floor. But something inside me had solidified. "I know," I said. "But you weren't here." Elias was. Nolan scoffed quietly, but I didn't even glance at him. My eyes were still on Sienna, searching for some flicker of recognition. Something to show she understood what her absence had cost. Naomi cleared her throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, I know this is difficult, but he has the right to decide. If you'd like to talk more, I'm available after." She guided them to the door with calm grace, giving me a small nod that felt like someone placing a blanket over my shoulders. Sienna hesitated, looked back like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Nolan's hand touched her arm, and he led her out. He glanced at me one last time, flat, unreadable. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just kept staring at the ceiling, my chest rising slow and steady. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't being vengeful. I was surviving. Because when it counted, the people who were supposed to stay didn't. They chose numbers over my heartbeat. And in that room full of beeping machines, I made a choice of my own. I would never let them speak for me again. I stayed still, staring upward. The air felt thick, like a weight pressing into me. My body ached in places I didn't know existed. But the pain had changed. It wasn't stabbing anymore. Just a slow, steady pulse, echoing the rhythm of the heart monitor. I was alive. I had made it through something that tried to take me. And that felt both like a blessing and a loss. The silence was heavier than the pain, and somehow, exactly what I needed. The silence gave me space. Space to breathe, to think, to pick up the scattered pieces of what the last few days had become. Then the door opened with a soft click. It was Nurse Naomi again. Her eyes warm but all business, holding a small stack of neatly clipped forms. One look at her, and I knew this wasn't just a check-in. She pulled the chair from the corner and took a seat next to my bed. "Mr. Whitmore," she began, voice gentle but firm, "there's something important we need to go over." My breath caught. I'd had enough of important lately to last a lifetime. But I gave her a nod, silently telling her to go on. "It's about your emergency contact and medical proxy," she said. "After your surgery, you listed Elias Delgado as your primary contact." She handed me the paperwork, and I took it, my hands trembling just a little. I remembered that moment. Still groggy, barely able to keep my eyes open, but very aware I had woken up alone. No Sienna, no family, just silence. Elias had shown up, no hesitation, no fanfare, drove 2 hours without being asked. He'd been the one in the plastic chair next to my bed, the one who squeezed my hand and said, "You're not alone, man. I got you." And that was the moment I finally understood. Blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Last names don't guarantee love. Family is who shows up when it matters. Naomi cleared her throat delicately, bringing me back to the present. "Legally," she said, "this means that any decisions regarding your care outside of routine procedures now fall to Mr. Delgado, unless you decide otherwise." She paused. "Your wife, Sienna, is no longer listed." She watched me for a reaction, but I kept my face still. Let the truth settle in quietly, like a stone sinking in deep water. "That's how it should be," I said, and was surprised by how calm I sounded. She didn't answer when it mattered. Naomi nodded slowly. "We just needed to make sure it was intentional, and that you understand what it means." Before I could respond, the door opened again. Sienna and Nolan stepped inside like they owned the floor. Sienna looked tense, her jaw locked, her eyes scanning the room like a lawyer entering court. Nolan, on the other hand, looked smug, like he already knew how this conversation would end. Naomi stood, unfazed. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said coolly, "Mr. Whitmore has updated his emergency contact and proxy." She said it clean and direct. No filler. No soft edges. I respected that. Sienna blinked. "What?" Her voice cracked a little, sharp and shaky. She turned to me like I'd just admitted something criminal. "You changed it?" "Without even telling me." I took a breath, trying to settle the tremor in my chest. "After the surgery," I said, voice low. "When I woke up, you weren't here. Elias was. He's the one who showed up." I didn't look away. I held her gaze and said the words I knew would finally make it real. I needed someone I could trust. She looked like she'd been slapped. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "But I'm your wife," she said, barely above a whisper. It didn't even sound convincing coming from her. Nolan scoffed. "This is absurd," he said, with that same snide tone he always used when he thought he had the upper hand. "Elias is not family. You're making a mistake." His arrogance was exhausting. Naomi stepped forward, planting herself between us like a shield. "Mr. Whitmore has every legal right to choose his own emergency contact. His decision is valid, and it's been formally documented." Sienna's head dropped, her hair falling into her face. "You can't just replace me," she said, voice cracking. "We're married. That means something." I looked at her, really looked, and saw everything I'd ignored for years, the distance, the absence, the choices she made without me. It wasn't just about Nolan or the company. It was the pattern, the silent prioritizing of ambition over partnership. "I didn't want to do this," I said, my voice soft but unwavering. "But I needed to be sure someone would show up when I couldn't speak for myself." I paused. "You weren't there, Sienna. I called from that ambulance, barely breathing, and you told me to wait." Nolan shifted awkwardly beside her. "Okay," he said, trying to sound reasonable. "Let's not turn this into a circus. We're family. We're supposed to stick together." I turned to him, my voice colder than I expected. "Were we family when you stood there and let her ignore me? When you bragged about your presentation instead of asking if I was going to make it?" Silence swept across the room like a curtain. Naomi cleared her throat again. "Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Nolan," she said, her tone polite but firm. "If you have further questions, they can be directed to Mr. Whitmore's designated contact. Otherwise, I'll need to ask you to step out so he can rest." Sienna's face flickered with something, maybe guilt, maybe anger, maybe both. But then her features hardened. She turned toward Nolan, nodded, and they both walked out. The door clicked shut behind them like punctuation. Final. Clear. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The exhaustion hit me all at once, but beneath it, something else stirred, something like relief. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It felt like space I could breathe in. Naomi turned back with a faint smile. "You did the right thing," she said. "It's your life. Your voice." I nodded. The tightness in my chest loosened just enough for the air to feel clean again. "Thank you," I whispered. She gave my hand a light squeeze, then left me alone. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the machines whisper in the background. For the first time in a long time, the quiet wasn't a punishment. It felt earned. Whatever came next, I'd face it on my terms. Later, when I finally got out of bed, the hallway felt longer than I remembered. The four-stand rolled beside me like a silent partner. My legs trembled with each step, like they were still deciding if they could carry the weight of everything I just lived through. But I kept going. I walked to reclaim something I didn't have a name for. Naomi had said walking would help. Breathing. Moving forward. The hospital at night was quieter, almost peaceful. Machines blinked in rhythm. Nurses whispered as they moved past. The air smelled like alcohol wipes and something else I couldn't name. Maybe it was hope. Or maybe it was the echo of everything I'd lost. Then I turned a corner, and there was Elias. Like always, he appeared exactly when I needed him. Same familiar grin, but his eyes scanned my face carefully, as if checking what was broken and what had healed. "Hey, man," he said, reaching for the four-pole and guiding me gently toward a nearby alcove with 2 chairs. "You're supposed to be resting," Elias said with that calm voice of his. I tried to smile, but it didn't come naturally. It felt like a gesture that used to fit and didn't anymore, like wearing someone else's skin. "I just needed to move," I muttered. He nodded slowly, concern etched into the lines near his eyes. "I get it. But you've also got to let yourself heal, and not just your body. He didn't finish the thought. He didn't have to. I knew what he meant. Heal in ways deeper than stitches or bandages. We sat together in the quiet corner of the hallway. Just the two of us, the hum of hospital machines filling the silence. Elias pulled out his phone, thumbed through a few messages. I got in touch with Talia, he said. The sound of her name hit me like ice. My stomach twisted. Talia, once head of HR at my company, sharp, meticulous, never missed a red flag. She's already digging into your insurance records, Elias continued. It's strange. She found a bunch of missing documents. Like, your onboarding file was flagged for deletion. I felt the air leave my lungs. My hands went cold. Flagged? I asked. As in, deleted on purpose? Elias looked up, his jaw clenched. Yeah, that's exactly what she thinks. A new kind of pain bloomed in my chest. Not surgical. Not physical. It was the ache of realization. I thought back to those earlier months, back when Sienna had offered to help me with the benefits paperwork. She'd smiled, told me she just wanted to make sure everything got filed correctly. Said it was no trouble. She was already volunteering in HR through Nolan's latest Keep Her Busy project. I hadn't questioned it. Why would I? She was my wife. I trusted her. But now? So it's possible, I said slowly, the words tasting like poison, that she deleted my benefits on purpose. Elias didn't look away. Yeah, man. It's looking like sabotage. My heart clenched. This wasn't about missed signatures or clerical errors. This was betrayal with intent. Calculated. Cold. While I was stressing over deadlines and boardroom performance, the person who should have been my partner was slicing holes in my safety net. Why? I whispered, barely audible, more to myself than to him. Elias shrugged, but the answer was already in his eyes. Maybe it was easier for her to drain you when you were already bleeding, he said quietly. Or maybe Nolan needed someone to take the fall. I closed my eyes and took in the sharp hospital air. Everything stung, not just the wound in my side, but the memory of every smile Sienna gave me while she held a knife behind her back. It feels like a second wound, I murmured. She's sending me the full report, Elias said. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I promise. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. It felt like I was standing at the edge of something deep, the ground giving way beneath my feet. Every loving gesture, every whispered, I love you, every morning coffee we shared, they all blurred into something hollow. It all felt orchestrated, designed to keep me still while they moved the pieces around me. Elias reached over and rested his hand on my shoulder. You're not going through this alone, he said. We're gonna fight it. All of it. I met his eyes, and for a flicker of a second, I saw the old me in his reflection, the man who believed people meant what they said, who thought love couldn't lie. I wanted to be that man again. I really did. But the ground under me still felt cracked. Thanks, I said quietly. I don't even know where to begin. You start by getting better, he told me. Let Talia work her angle. Let me help. You've carried this weight solo for too long. We sat there for a while. No more words. Just a quiet understanding between two people holding broken pieces of the same story. A nurse passed us, offering a soft smile, but I barely noticed. My head was spinning with memories, Sienna's laugh in our kitchen, those just work calls with Nolan that suddenly had a different color. Every detail now looked suspicious. Every kind gesture felt like setup. I trusted her, I said, my voice barely louder than the machines around us. God, I had trusted her. Elias didn't interrupt. He let the words settle. Let them sit. And she used that trust like a weapon, I continued. I gave her everything, and she turned it into leverage. My voice cracked, and for once, I didn't care. I didn't care how it sounded. I wasn't holding it together anymore. That performance was over. We'll fix it, Elias said, his tone firmer now. Step by step. We're not letting them win. I nodded, letting those words reach somewhere deeper. One step at a time, I repeated. I knew it wouldn't be simple. There'd be legal messes, audits, probably courtrooms. Maybe worse. And I'd have moments when I wanted to crawl back to the lie, just for the comfort of it. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Sienna had crossed a line I couldn't unsee. And I wasn't the same man who used to excuse it. Elias stood and reached out his hand. Come on, he said with a small smile. Back to bed. You've got healing to do. And tomorrow, we start figuring out how to fix all of this. I let him help me up and guide me back to the room. The sheets were cold and clean, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something shift inside me, a quiet strength flickering back to life. I wasn't a victim. Not anymore. Whatever this was, sabotage, betrayal, manipulation, I would uncover it all. And the people who thought they'd buried me? They'd find out I wasn't going quietly. The day after I got home, the mail arrived like a punch. A pile of envelopes, each heavier than the last. Bills. Hospital. Surgery. Medication. Lab work. Names and amounts stamped across paper like accusations I couldn't answer. I sat at the kitchen table, Elias across from me, his forehead creased in that focused way of his. He'd taken it upon himself to help sort through the mess. I didn't even ask, he just did it. And I was grateful. "It's going to be okay," he said softly. I almost laughed. Almost. But the pressure in my chest made even that feel like too much. "Elias," I said, voice raw from days of silence, "they're saying I owe over $100,000. I picked up one of the bills and traced the embossed hospital logo with my thumb. Every single one of these has my name on it. The nausea hit fast. A tight knot of disbelief and rage twisting in my stomach. "I had insurance," I said, like maybe saying it again could make it true. "We paid into that plan every month. This shouldn't even be happening." Elias nodded, scanning the spreadsheet he was building on his laptop. Columns of dates, provider names, amounts, my collapse laid out in numbers. He didn't have to say it. I already knew. Something wasn't adding up. "Yeah, I know," Elias murmured, his voice low. "But when Talia checked your file, she found your benefits paperwork was completely gone. Everything. Like you'd never even enrolled." He exhaled hard, frustration sitting on his shoulders. This wasn't a glitch. Somebody wiped it. On purpose. The realization settled in my chest like wet cement, heavy, suffocating, and impossible to ignore. I closed my eyes and pictured Sienna's face. The day she offered to help out with HR. She'd said it was a courtesy. Something to keep her busy between gigs. Ran her fingers through my hair and smiled. "You're always swamped," she told me. "Let me handle the forms. I'll make sure everything's squared away." And like a fool, I thanked her. I believed her. That trust, it had cost me everything. Elias tapped his fingers against the table, eyes narrowed in thought. His brain was already sprinting ahead. "I reached out to Harper," he said, flicking his eyes to me. "She's a forensic accountant now. Hardcore. She's already reviewing your financials, with your permission." He slid a folder toward me. I opened it, and the blood drained from my face. There it was, in black and white. Withdrawals I couldn't explain. Charges from cities I'd never visited. But what made my hands go numb was the transfer. A huge sum, the nest egg I'd built over years. Gone. 42 grand, I muttered. My voice cracked. That was for our house. Sienna always said it went toward bills. Expenses. The unexpected. Elias's jaw flexed. It didn't, he said. Harper tracked it. Every cent went to Braincrest Ventures. Nolan's company. My stomach flipped. My vision blurred. All those long nights. The holidays I'd missed. Every dinner I'd skipped just to grind, to save. All of it, stolen. She lied, I whispered. She took it all. Gave it to him. My hands curled into fists. That money was our future, and she gave it away like it meant nothing. Elias reached across the table and grabbed my wrist, grounding me. She doesn't get to walk away from this, he said. Not without a fight. I wanted to believe him. God, I needed to. But right then, all I could feel was empty. Like the man I used to be had been scooped out and replaced with a hollow shell. I don't even know where to begin, I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. Elias didn't flinch. You start here, he said, tapping the folder. You build your case. You show this to the right people. And you remember who the hell you are. He leaned forward. You're not some victim in a story someone else wrote. You're the guy who survived surgery. You're still standing. You're still breathing. And for a second, I felt it. That old fire. Faint, but real. I sat up straighter. The ache in my side reminded me I wasn't done yet. Okay, I said. Okay. What's the next move? Elias's grin sharpened. We go to his office. We get every file, every paper trail. Then we call a lawyer. He leaned in closer. You've got the receipts. Now it's time to make them pay. The drive to Harper's office felt like a funeral procession for every bad decision I'd ever made. The city drifted by, gray, cold, distant, while I stared out the window, watching a man I barely recognized stare back at me. Elias was beside me, walking me through the strategy. Fraud complaints, restitution, possible criminal charges. I heard the words, but they came in fragments, like armor being assembled piece by piece. Harper's office was inside a renovated warehouse, sleek, exposed brick and steel beams. Serious energy. No frills. She greeted us at the door. Tall. Focused. Didn't smile. Let's get started, she said, already leading us to a conference room where spreadsheets blanketed the table. I've tracked every suspicious transaction, she said, sliding a thick packet my way. You're looking at a full financial autopsy. I flipped through it. Withdrawals to shell companies. Charges from cities Nolan had visited. Payments to consultants I'd never hired. It felt like staring at someone else's nightmare. How did they think they'd get away with this? I asked, throat dry. Harper raised an eyebrow. Because you trusted them, she said. And they counted on that. A slow, quiet rage began to burn in my chest. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that simmers hot and focused. I didn't let it show. I stayed with the numbers. The facts. The truth I could hold in my hands. Can we prove it? I asked. Her lips curled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. Oh, we can prove it, she said. There's a trail a mile wide. They got sloppy. Elias leaned back in his chair, arms folded, that fire still in his eyes. This is just the start, he said. They tried to erase you. Now you get to erase them. And in that moment, I felt something settle. A quiet strength. I wasn't broken. I wasn't beaten. Maybe, just maybe, I was coming back stronger. I gathered the papers in front of me, each one a shard of the truth they tried to bury. Let's bring this house of cards down, I said, voice calm. Controlled. And for the first time since this all started. I meant it. Back home, I sat in the guest room, now my makeshift office, surrounded by boxes of old financial records spread across the bed like landmines. The overhead light was harsh, casting long shadows. Every red circle Harper had drawn lit up like a warning. My eyes were burning, dry from hours of staring. And then I saw it. Trust fund. 2 words that glared back at me like a punch. I'd nearly forgotten about it. A modest inheritance from my grandfather. Meant to unlock on my 32nd birthday. Security. Stability. A gift meant to wait patiently for when I needed it most. But it never came. No letter. No deposit. Nothing. Like it had vanished. Harper sat across from me, laptop open, glasses low on her nose. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, calling up transaction logs and timestamps like she was tracing a crime scene. You mentioned your grandfather left a trust, she said, focused. I nodded slowly. Yeah, it was supposed to release last year. I figured there was some delay. Maybe paperwork. Even as I said it, I hated how naive it sounded. She stopped typing, looked up. It wasn't paperwork, she said. It was theft. She turned the laptop toward me. A spreadsheet filled the screen, line after line of movements and withdrawals. Her finger landed on one line. One date. The trust matured the week after your 32nd birthday, she said quietly. And this is when it disappeared. And this, Harper said, tapping the screen, this is when the money was legally. She made air quotes with her fingers, redirected. To an account in your name. On paper, anyway. I felt my stomach turn. But I never saw it. I said, my voice barely a whisper. How is that even possible? Harper sighed, her jaw tightening. Because you didn't sign off on it. But someone did. She paused, then added, your wife had power of attorney at the time. That hit like a punch to the ribs. She was listed as your proxy, Harper continued, due to the concussion. Remember? I did. Too well. That minor car accident. On the way home from work. Sienna had jumped into action, made me soup, handled the insurance forms, rescheduled meetings. I thought she was being supportive. I thought she cared. She handed me papers, and I signed them. Never asked questions. Because she was my wife. Because I believed she was on my side. Harper leaned back, eyes sharp. Your signature's on the release form, she said. But according to the hospital records, you were sedated that day. You were recovering. She slid a paper across the table. My signature stared up at me. Too perfect. Too clean. A ghost version of my handwriting, forged from trust. And Nolan, she added. His name is listed as the witness. I blinked hard. My head was spinning. Fury boiled in my chest. So they forged my name, I said slowly, the words bitter in my mouth. They stole the trust and left me with nothing. Harper gave a slow nod. That's exactly what happened. I leaned back, the weight of it all pressing down like bricks. How much was in the trust? I asked, not sure I wanted to hear the answer. Enough, she said gently. Not millions, but a strong foundation. Something to fall back on. Now it was gone. I thought of my grandfather. A quiet man with worn hands and tired eyes. who worked 2 jobs for most of his life. That trust was his final gift to me, something he built piece by piece so I wouldn't have to start from scratch. And Sienna, she took it like it was hers to give away. My fists tightened. My nails dug into my palms. I gave her everything, I said through clenched teeth. My heart, my future, my trust. And she handed it to Nolan like it was a party favor. I want it back, I said, voice low and steady. Harper gave a thin, fierce smile. Then we'll take it back. We'll file with the trust administrator, notify the bank, and we'll get a fraud attorney who knows what they're doing. She hesitated. But you need to be ready. This won't be clean. It's going to get ugly. I looked her straight in the eye. I've seen ugly, I muttered. This is personal now. She closed her laptop, then leaned forward. One more thing, she said, tone almost cautious. Your aunt, the executor of the trust. She sent me copies of the original documents. She's furious. I swallowed. She is. She said you never asked about the trust, that you always said you wanted to make your own way. She wasn't wrong. That had been the plan. Wait until I earned it. That pride, that patience, had become a weapon used against me. Harper handed me another sheet. My signature circled in red. She feels responsible, she added. She's willing to help now. She feels like she failed you. I stared at the page. The forged signature that almost looked like mine, but felt so wrong. I could see it, clear as day. Sienna guiding the pen. Nolan smirking as he signed beside it. They knew exactly how to twist the knife. She played the long game, I said, anger rising up in my chest. And I let her. Harper reached out and rested her hand over mine. She hasn't won, she said quietly. Not yet. You're still here. Still fighting. I nodded, something hard settling in my chest. Then let's fight, I said. Let's burn down every bridge they built on my back. Harper smiled. There was steel in it. That's what I like to hear. Tomorrow we meet with the lawyer. And after that, we make them wish they'd never underestimated you. I let the rage inside me slow, not disappear, but sharpen. Sienna and Nolan had taken so much. My money, my trust, my grandfather's last gift. But they didn't take me. And they weren't going to. The next message from Sienna came through as a text. Dinner tomorrow. Just us. Let's clear the air. Casual. Like we were still friends. Like everything she did could be erased over wine and dessert. I stared at it for a long time. Did she really believe she still owned my time? My forgiveness? Elias sat across from me, watching my face twist with disbelief. You going? He asked eventually. I nodded. Yeah, I said. But I'm not going alone. He didn't even ask who I was bringing. We both already knew. Harper didn't hesitate. I'll come as your financial advisor, she said, eyes flashing with calm control. We'll treat it like any other business meeting. I tried to thank her, but the words didn't come. I just nodded, grateful. The next evening, I pulled on a button-down that suddenly felt too tight. The mirror showed a man who looked tired, but different. Harder. Sharper. Standing. Elias drove us to the restaurant. Some trendy bistro Sienna had picked, probably to remind everyone she was polished, in control. A small part of me still marveled at her audacity. The rest of me walked in like I was stepping into enemy territory. She was already seated by the window when we arrived, a glass of white wine in her hand. Nolan standing nearby like some corporate guard dog. His smile was too wide, too perfect. I clenched my jaw. Harper touched my arm, grounding me. Breathe, she whispered. I did. One breath, then another. As we reached the table, Sienna's eyes flickered. Her smile faltered, just for a second. Then she put it back on. Oh, she said warmly, too warmly. Honey, I didn't know you'd be bringing someone. She gestured to the chairs. Please sit. Nolan's smirk slid back into place. This was supposed to be family, he said. You sure you want to bring an outsider? Harper met his stare without blinking. I'm here in a professional capacity, she replied, her tone crisp. You don't mind, do you? Nolan's smirk faltered as we sat. The confidence started to drain as the silence thickened. We ordered some overpriced salmon that barely qualified as food. Polished plates, barely full, just like the conversation. Empty. Cold. Sienna was the first to break the silence. She cleared her throat and gave me that same polished, PR smile. The one I used to mistake for care. I wanted to talk, she began gently. About everything. Things got messy, but I still think we can work through this. I felt my chest tighten. No. Harden. Like you worked through my trust fund? I asked, sharper than I intended, but not as sharp as it deserved to be. Her eyes widened, just a flash of guilt. Then she recovered. That was a misunderstanding, she said, glancing at Nolan like he might have a better excuse loaded. We were trying to consolidate things for us. I let out a short, bitter laugh. For us, I repeated. That money wasn't yours. It was mine. A gift from my grandfather. And you forged my name to take it. Nolan leaned forward, voice flat, ice cold. You're being dramatic. We didn't steal from you. Harper didn't flinch. She calmly reached into her bag and placed a folder on the table. Actually, she said, her tone precise, that's exactly what you did. Nolan's face went pale. Sienna's smile vanished. What is this? She asked, voice trembling. Harper's voice stayed even, edged with quiet steel. A financial summary. Every red flag. Withdrawals, forged authorizations, shell accounts. And it's already been submitted to counsel. Sienna's jaw dropped. Nolan's fingers tightened around his glass. You can't just, he started. But I cut in. I can. Because this is my life. My money. My name. And I'm done being treated like a placeholder in my own story. Sienna's composure cracked. Her eyes darted from Harper to me and back again, trying to find a familiar version of me, one who didn't exist anymore. But we're married, she stammered. We were building something. Nolan needed help, and I thought. You thought wrong, I said flatly. You thought I'd just keep working while you drained everything I saved into his failing business. Nolan's face turned red. Braincrest Ventures isn't failing, he snapped. Harper tilted her head. Then how are you planning to pay off the convertible note? No coverage left, right? His mouth opened, then shut. Sienna looked at him, her face folding in on itself. Nolan, she whispered. His silence said everything. Harper leaned in. The lawyer has the documents. So does the IRS. So does the bank. You'll be hearing from all of them soon. Sienna turned to me, her eyes wide with panic. Please, she whispered. We can fix this. Start over. I felt something inside shift, like a final door closing quietly. You ended this, I said, my voice low. The moment you chose a presentation over my life. Nolan scoffed, but Harper shut him down with a single look. It's over, she said. Accounts are frozen. Complaints are filed. You'll need legal counsel. The waiter dropped the check at the table, and I reached for it, but Harper gently placed her hand on mine. I've got it, she said. Consider it part of my retainer. Sienna stared at us, her eyes blank. Nolan stood, mumbling something about getting ahead of it. They walked away together, hand in hand, but I didn't feel the old ache. No longing, no regret, just release. I looked at Harper. My chest felt light for the first time in months. Thank you, I said. She smiled, not with triumph, but with warmth. You did the hard part, she replied. You faced them. I nodded. And now I get to rebuild. As we stepped out into the night air, I realized something had changed. I wasn't carrying them anymore. The next 2 weeks passed like a storm made of paperwork. Phone calls. Lawyers. Endless emails, all neatly stacked in my inbox like bricks in a wall I was finally building between me and the chaos. Each morning brought more updates. Case progress. Discovery logs. Surprise records from HR. Talia's latest findings. All of it sharp and precise, a fortress of evidence. Elias checked in every single day. Always steady. Always real. A tether I didn't know I needed. But the nights, they were brutal. That's when the memory slipped in. Sienna's voice echoing across a conference room. Nolan's smirk hovering over my signature. Every lie, every betrayal, playing on loop like a scratch tape. I didn't forget. I couldn't. Then came the first headline, tucked on page 2 of the business section. Braincrest Ventures under investigation for financial misconduct. I read it twice. The words felt like closure and a confession at the same time. For months, I'd hated myself for missing the signs. Now, the world saw them too. And then it snowballed. Investors pulled out. Elias called me, half laughing, half stunned. They're on the run, man, he said. They're finally getting what's coming. Sienna's name surfaced next, quietly at first. Whispers in the circles she used to dominate. One of her past consulting firms flagged her during an internal audit. The fallout was fast. Brutal. She was escorted out within days. Badge revoked. Email locked. I pictured her standing outside the sleek glass tower she once called her second home. A cardboard box in her hands, full of things she never earned. Part of me wanted to feel sorry. But that part had gone quiet. Then came the official fraud complaints, filed one after another. Harper had built a blueprint of their deception. Every transaction. Every shell account. Every forgery. My lawyer packaged it neatly and filed it with the courts, the banks, the trust, like a series of knockout blows. The trust, the documents, the theft. They hadn't just hurt me. They'd left fingerprints on everything. And now the system was tracing every last one. I didn't think about Nolan's smirk anymore. I pictured his panic instead when the accounts froze. When the IRS started asking questions. When his investors demanded answers he didn't have. Sienna's tears. Her apologies. Her "we can fix this" speeches. None of it mattered anymore. Not in the face of evidence. One night, as the sun dropped behind the skyline, I sat on the balcony of my temporary apartment. A stack of reports rested in my lap. The final pages of their undoing. I watched the city lights flicker to life. And for the first time in months, I felt still. Peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind you earn. The kind that comes after you've done everything you could, when the truth speaks louder than you ever could. The very systems they used, legal, financial, personal, were now turning on them. And I didn't have to lift my voice. I didn't have to chase them. I just had to let the truth work like gravity. Elias knocked on my door, two familiar taps that sounded like friendship, not intrusion. He stepped onto the balcony with a six-pack of cheap beer in hand. "You've got that look," he said, handing me a bottle. Like a man who finally broke the chains. I took it. The cold glass grounded me. "It's not over yet," I said, "but it's starting to feel like it could be." He nodded, eyes out on the city, watching the lights flicker on. "They thought they could bleed you dry and walk away smiling," he said. "But you didn't fold. You fought back. That's what matters." I sipped the beer. The bitterness was sharp, but it was real. I think the worst part, I admitted, was realizing I couldn't trust her. I kept telling myself she'd come back. That it was all just a mistake. Elias's gaze softened. "That's what good people do," he said. "They give second chances. But sometimes, you've got to draw a line. You did that. You protected yourself." His words landed softly, like rain on scorched earth. "I just wanted to be loved," I said, quietly. Elias leaned over and tapped his bottle against mine. "And you will be," he said. "By the right person. The real way. You just have to believe that." We sat in silence after that. The city breathing. And for the first time in a long time, I breathed with it. The next morning, my phone rang. My lawyer's voice buzzed in my ear. "Brant Crest Ventures is officially dissolving," he said. There was triumph in his tone. "Federal auditors are moving in. There's talk of criminal charges." I closed my eyes and felt something loosen inside me. Not joy. Not gloating. Just release. "And Sienna?" I asked. He paused. "She's under investigation too. Her name's on several filings. It's moving fast now." I nodded, even though he couldn't see. Let them investigate. She'd earned it. That night, I slept like a man who didn't have to lock the door twice. No nightmares. No betrayal in the dark. Just rest. Real rest. The kind that doesn't wake you in a sweat wondering if you missed a sign. I woke to sunlight. Warm across my face. Gentle. Inviting. It felt like a new beginning. Elias was already in the kitchen, coffee brewing. "Big day," he said, handing me a mug. "You ready?" I nodded. "Yeah," I said. For the first time. "I think I really am." Because I wasn't running anymore. Not from the pain. Not from the shame. Not from the truth. I'd faced it. I'd survived it. And now, I was free. Free from the lies. Free from the weight of trying to prove my worth to people who never deserved it. Free to begin again on my own terms. That kind of freedom? It tasted better than anyone I'd ever chased. I didn't expect the next call. The number popped up on my phone like a ghost from another life. I knew it instantly. Sienna's father. I hadn't spoken to him in months. Not since everything unraveled. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I answered. "Hello," I said, cautious. "It's me," he said. His voice sounded rough, heavy, like it had aged 10 years in a matter of weeks. I don't know what happened," he said slowly. "She used to be so kind." I closed my eyes. "Maybe once," I said. "But something changed. Somewhere along the way, she lost herself." He sighed, and it wasn't just tired. It was heartbroken. "I raised her to be honest," he said. "To stand by the people who love her. I don't know where that went." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry." The words caught me off guard. This man hadn't done anything to me. And yet, he sounded just as betrayed. "You don't owe me that," I said gently. "She made her choices." There was silence. The kind that stretches long, like something waiting to break. Then he spoke again. "She's been cut off," he said. No more support. No more family money. If she wants to fix this, she'll do it on her own. It sounded like a door slamming shut. One final chance gone. That's fair, I said. She's had enough lifelines. He let out another long sigh. I always thought you were good for her, he said. I never thought she'd hurt you like this. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I never thought she'd do it either, I admitted. But she did. There was a pause. Then his voice softened. If you need anything, he said, you call me. I mean that. I blinked hard. Thank you, I whispered. That means more than you know. We hung up after a quiet goodbye. No drama. Just mutual grief for someone we'd both lost long before the damage became visible. I stared at the wall for a while after. Not in anger. Not in regret. Just in reflection. Even her father saw it now. She wasn't the woman any of us thought she was. Nolan's call came later that night. I didn't answer, but his voice slid out of the speaker like oil. We're family, he said, desperate. Can't we work something out? A laugh bubbled up. Short. Bitter. Family. Were we family when I was lying in a hospital bed and he was laughing in the hallway? Were we family when they drained my accounts to prop up his failing empire? I hit delete. Mid-voicemail. Didn't even finish it. The silence that followed? It felt like peace. The ties they used to hold over me were gone. Clean cut. No more guilt. No more weight. I marked the dissolution date of Nolan's company on the calendar in red ink. Not for celebration, but for closure. It was never about revenge. It was about closure, the final, undeniable proof that I wasn't crazy. That everything I'd sensed, feared, and endured had been real all along. I arrived at my new place, a small loft with big windows and soft light. The kind of place that breathed with you, not against you. After months in the dark, it felt like stepping into daylight. Just as I set the keys down, my phone buzzed. Subject: Bryn Crest Ventures LLC dissolution filed. Plain words. Simple subject line. But it read like a victory anthem. I tapped it open and read the first line aloud, a quiet smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Effective immediately, I said, calm and clear. The company known as Bryn Crest Ventures is dissolved, pending federal investigation. More than a notice. It was validation. The unraveling had become official. Elias was already inside, sleeves rolled up, paint roller in hand, his shirt splattered with streaks of blue. You're looking at a free man, he said, nodding toward the walls. But help me finish this trim before I regret offering to help you move. I laughed, not bitter, not forced. Just light. I've got the corners, I said, grabbing a brush. The scent of fresh paint hung in the air. So did possibility. For the first time in months, I wasn't just escaping something. I was building something. Something no one could take from me. Every stroke on the wall felt like a step forward. Every layer of color a quiet promise. Harper arrived later, folders in hand, her eyes shining with quiet pride. The financial plan is locked, she said, setting them on the counter like blueprints. Your accounts are secure. The trust is restored. And the recovery process has started. She gave a tired smile, one lined with months of exhaustion. Thank you, I said, the words sticking in my throat. I don't even know how to. You don't have to, she interrupted, waving it off. Her smile turned sharp. Just don't let anyone take your peace again. That night, I met Talia at the bar down the street, the kind of place where no one wore suits and nobody pretended to be something they weren't. She greeted me with a grin and slid a whiskey across the table. You look different, she said. Less like a guy on a stretcher. More like someone who just escaped a sinking ship. I laughed. It felt good. Yeah, that's about right, I said. We talked for hours, about nothing, about everything. Old jobs. Terrible dates. Future maybes. What now? She asked at one point, her tone soft. I stared at my glass. Took a sip. I don't know, I admitted. But I know what it won't be. No more lifelines tied to the wrong people. She nodded. That's a damn good place to start. And just like that, I realized something. Starting over didn't mean starting alone. A week later, I was unpacking the final box when there was a knock at the door. Sienna stood there, smaller than I remembered. Shoulders slumped. A worn duffel bag in one hand. Can we talk? She asked, her voice raw. I hesitated. For a breath. Not out of anger. Just reflection. She stepped into the apartment, scanning the space. You've made it nice, she said softly, eyeing the bright walls in the afternoon light. I said nothing. I've lost everything, she whispered. Nolan's gone. The investors are coming after me. I don't know what to do. I breathed in, steady. The ache was still there, but it no longer controlled me. You did this to yourself, I said quietly. You had choices. You made them. Her eyes filled with tears. We can start over, she pleaded. We can fix this. I shook my head. No, I said. You ended it. The day you chose him over my life. I met her gaze firm, clear. I'm not angry anymore. But I'm not yours anymore, either. She broke. No defenses left. No schemes. Just a quiet collapse. I watched her leave. And when the door clicked shut behind her, it felt like the final line of a long, brutal chapter. I stood there for a moment, letting it all settle. Then I turned toward the room toward my life. Elias was right. I was free. Not just from her. From all of it. The lies. The silence. The shadows that had followed me for far too long. Now, I had people beside me who earned their place not by taking, but by standing. I poured a drink and stepped out onto the balcony. The city hummed beneath me. Cars. Laughter. Life. I smiled. Small, quiet. Real. The future wasn't written yet. But this time, it would be mine. I closed my eyes, breathing in the night air, and felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not loud. Not cinematic. Just true. And I knew, finally, I was exactly where I was meant to be.